Gorbachev comes to China, seeking to heal old wounds and neutralize America's strategic advantage in Asia. He is upstaged by striking students, seeking to change the face of communism.
This is the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting tonight from Tiananmen Gate in Beijing, China. Good evening. This is where, 40 years ago, Mao Zedong stepped into the place previously reserved for emperors handing down their edicts and proclaimed the triumph of his communist revolution. Tiananmen Square is the heart of China. This is where most of the major confrontations of modern Chinese history have taken place, including the mass student demonstrations for democracy. Today, it is also the site of the first Soviet-Chinese summit in 30 years. The leaders of two huge nations groping with the realization that communism as they and we have known it hasn't worked. And with the question, what next? What now? Can communism change enough, fast enough to survive?
It was a watershed in the history of the world communist movement. The reconciliation of the two communist giants. The first Chinese-Soviet summit since 1959. But right from the start, it was overshadowed by events within China. At the last minute, Chinese leaders cut back welcoming ceremonies to quick hellos at the airport only, canceling plans for longer ones that were to have included a stop at Tiananmen Square downtown. They did that to avoid confrontation with thousands of hunger-striking students and more than 100,000 supporters, all pressing demands for a more democratic government and more freedom. And so Gorbachev accepted the stiff greetings of Chinese communist leaders on the airport tarmac, while those same leaders were being denounced in the square. Getting to the center of the square means passing through an ocean of students, bicycles, banners, loudspeakers, slogan chanting, singing, and applause. The mood is serious but not angry. Determination, not rage, is on the faces and in the voices. They defied a government order to be out of the square by the time Gorbachev arrived, and no one seemed afraid.
Why I should be afraid? I'm just a common student.
Their numbers, their solidarity, and the cause protected them against a crackdown.
The government will not and cannot make that decision to crack down on the student movement.
Do you agree with that?
Because we have people behind us.
Police were around in force, but instead of breaking up the crowds, they broke into patriotic song, and the students sang back.
This is the Monument to Heroes in the middle of Tiananmen Square. Raisa and Mikhail Gorbachev were, according to the original schedule, supposed to lay a wreath here tomorrow. It isn't going to happen.
At a banquet tonight, Gorbachev delivered his summit theme. The feud between Chinese and Soviet communists is over, he said, admitting that Moscow was partly to blame for the old troubles. Underscoring the shakiness of China's party leadership, 84-year-old Deng Xiaoping was not even there tonight. He didn't see Gorbachev during the day either. He'll meet him tomorrow, he said. The fill-in host, President Yang Shangkun, was non-committal, noting that Chinese-Soviet relations have traveled a tortuous course. Today, he said, we have hope for a new future. Hope that was echoed in Tiananmen Square by a young hunger striker for democracy. He says, I'm touched because my teachers and the principal of my school have come out to support the protest. This means all our pain and difficulties are not in vain. We're going to stick to it, right to the end. What the end will be, and when it will come, no one even tries to guess.
I'll be back in a moment with the other news of the day. And then we begin our special series of reports on two communist giants amid a revolution in the communist world. Gorbachev, China, and the new face of communism. ancient Forbidden City. On this first day of President Gorbachev's visit to Beijing, the Kremlin was busy publicizing the pullout of more Soviet troops from parts of Mongolia that border on China. The Kremlin says that over the next 2 years, it will withdraw 5,000 tanks and 50,000 soldiers from Mongolia. In Washington, U.S. Secretary of State Baker chose to talk about the pullout and the Gorbachev visit here in a positive light.
Well, I don't think that we should be worried about his visit to China. I think, quite frankly, it could be healthy for world stability. I don't think it's unhealthy to see troops being withdrawn by either side from the Sino-Soviet border. I think that's a healthy development.
Secretary of State Baker in Washington. As the summit unfolds here in China, in Washington, President Bush officially came out today with his proposals for a crackdown on violent crime in the U.S. The president's package does not include a ban on rapid-fire semi-automatic assault weapons made in the USA. White House correspondent Wyatt Andrews has more on what Mr. Bush did and did not propose.
Standing behind rain-spattered bulletproof glass at an emotional ceremony honoring policemen killed on duty, President Bush proposed a permanent ban on imports of assault rifles the government decides have no sporting purpose. But the president's proposal would not limit domestic assault rifles at all, only the ammunition clips that go inside them.
One thing that we do know about these assault weapons is that they are invariably equipped with unjustifiably large magazines.
His proposal would ban any gun clip or magazine that holds more than 15 bullets. Many assault clips now hold more than 30. The White House says the move would limit the firepower of criminals but protect the sportsman's right to own a semi-automatic. Critics say the proposal leaves U.S. manufacturers free to continue producing assault weapons and to pick up where foreign gun makers leave off.
These weapons are fairly easy to assemble, so-called manufacture, and I'm sure that other people will crop up and start making them, as they do now.
United States Marshal.
The rest of Mr. Bush's crime package focuses on law enforcement and new prisons. He would add 825 new federal officers, U.S. Marshals, FBI, and firearms agents. He wants 1,600 new prosecutors, longer minimum sentences for crimes with a gun, and tougher plea bargaining rules. Mr. Bush also wants $1.5 billion worth of new federal prison cells, 24,000 spaces, an increase of almost 80%.
We're going to take back the streets by taking criminals off the streets.
Surprisingly, gun control advocates who still want tough controls on all assault rifles today said they were encouraged. For the president to support gun control of any kind, they said, was a conversion. Wyatt Andrews, CBS News, the White House.
2 separate U.S. Supreme Court rulings today gave prison officials expanded powers, broader powers to limit what inmates may read and to limit who may be allowed to visit inmates. New moves in Washington today to force U.S. apple growers to end all use of the chemical treatment ALAR, and new questions about the scientific advisory panel that said it found no need to ban that chemical. CBS News correspondent Deborah Potter has the latest on the apple chemical controversy.
Despite a government promise to clean up the U.S. apple crop by next year, Congress and consumer groups pressed today for immediate action to ban the cancer-causing chemical ALAR, either by legislation or by court order.
We are compelled to file a lawsuit against EPA for its failure to immediately suspend, to ban as of today, ALAR in our food.
What I think we need is some swift, decisive action to restore confidence in the consumer and the marketplace.
But administration officials told a Senate committee that by moving to take ALAR off the market, they've done all they can under current law.
I do not think it's good public policy for Congress to be enacting chemical-by-chemical specific legislation. You continue to treat symptoms, but won't seem to get to the root of the problem.
The real problem, according to outside scientists, is that the system designed to regulate pesticides just doesn't work.
Banning ALAR is not going to solve the pesticide food safety problem. It's not just ALAR, it's a statute that allows this situation to go on and on and on.
Underscoring that charge, reports that 2 independent scientists who advised the government 4 years ago not to ban ALAR went to work for the company that makes the chemical. Senators today asked for an investigation, saying that kind of revolving door is a menace to public health. Deborah Potter, CBS News on Capitol Hill.
Recalled U.S. Ambassador Arthur Davis returned home today from Panama. In a parting shot, Davis charged that dictator Manuel Noriega actually ordered last week's attack on opposition candidates. He charged the attack was designed to kill candidate Guillermo Billy Ford, who was badly beaten.
You don't put a gun into the side of an automobile and fire at the people in it unless you're planning to kill somebody. And they did.
Los Angeles teachers today went on strike for the first time in 19 years, threatening confusion for almost 600,000 students in the final 5 weeks of the school year. The Los Angeles teachers are demanding a 21% pay hike over 2 years and more control over classrooms. They're armies of bureaucrats and servants. But as is so often the case with these formal summits, they won't be seeing much of how the ordinary Chinese live.
No, it's well to remember that for most of the people of this country, anything that happens in the cities might as well be happening on the moon. 800 million Chinese are peasants, and many of the grand schemes of the big city Communist Party planners have come to grief out there in the villages. Plum Valley is only 50 miles from Beijing, but for centuries people here have worked on the land, more or less in misery. In the 60s and 70s, the fanatical days of the Cultural Revolution, an army of young zealots from the cities descended on places like this to impose Mao Zedong's blueprint for the improvement of man. One of them was an 18-year-old named Wu Su. Here I am in my Red Guard armband, he says. I wanted to create a rural utopia. I asked to go to the poorest region. The region they sent him to was Plum Valley.
I'm Harry Smith.
And I'm Kathleen Sullivan. Tomorrow, continuing coverage of Mikhail Gorbachev's visit to China.
Also, Jeff Goldblum joins us on CBS This Morning.
This is CBS.